In 1968, a 13-year-old boy walked into his school and found something almost no other child on the planet had access to. A computer. Not a toy, not a calculator, a real machine, wired up to a mainframe, paid for by a group of mothers who had held a rummage sale to afford it. That boy was Bill Gates. And years later, he would say something that should stop you cold. That without that one school, that one machine, at that one specific moment in history, there would have been no Microsoft. Sit with that for a second. One of the richest men the world has ever produced. An empire that reshaped the planet. And at the very root of it is a coin flip he did not control. In a room he did not earn his way into. Everybody loves to talk about how hard Bill Gates worked. Almost nobody wants to talk about how astonishingly lucky he was to even be standing in that room in the first place. This is the lesson almost no one wants to hear. Behind nearly every great success, and behind nearly every devastating failure, there is a force quietly pulling the strings that has nothing at all to do with effort. We are going to give that force a name today. 2 names, actually. Luck and risk are siblings. They are 2 faces of the same single truth, that every outcome in your life is shaped by forces far beyond your own actions and decisions. We do not like this idea. It feels so much better to believe that results come purely from hard work and good choices. But the honest version of money and of life is messier and stranger than that. Nothing is ever quite as good as it looks from the outside, and nothing is ever quite as bad as it feels from the inside. Let me show you how thin the line really was. In 1968, almost no high school on Earth had a computer. By some estimates, out of the roughly 300 million high school-aged children alive at that moment, perhaps 300 had the kind of free, unlimited access that Bill Gates stumbled into at Lakeside School in Seattle. 300 out of 300 million. That is, almost exactly 1 in a million. Was Gates brilliant and obsessed? Absolutely, and none of that should be taken from him. But there were thousands of children, just as gifted and just as hungry, who never got within 1,000 miles of a computer until they were grown adults, by which point the race had already been won. Gates did not earn his way into that room. A group of mothers and a rummage sale put him there, and to his great credit, he later admitted it out loud. No Lakeside, no Microsoft. But here's the part of the story that almost no one ever tells. Because luck, you see, never travels alone. It always brings its darker sibling along with it. At Lakeside, Gates shared that computer room with 2 close friends. One was Paul Allen, who would go on to co-found Microsoft. The other was a boy named Kent Evans, every bit as gifted, every bit as obsessed, every bit as likely to change the world as Bill himself. The 2 were inseparable and certain, with the total confidence of teenagers, that they would build something enormous together one day. Kent never got the chance. Before he finished high school, he died in a mountaineering accident. And here is the detail that should give you chills. The odds of a high school student dying while climbing a mountain are, by the cold numbers, about 1 in a million. The exact same odds, in the opposite direction, as a boy getting his hands on a computer in 1968. One of them was a 1 in a million miracle. The other was a 1 in a million tragedy. Same coin, different side. And the thing that separated their 2 lives was not effort, it was not intelligence, it was not character or discipline or hunger. One was lifted up by luck, the other was taken by its twin, risk, nothing more. This is deeply uncomfortable, because it shatters the story we so badly want to believe. We want the successful to be successful because they earned it and deserved it. And we want the people who failed to have failed because they were lazy, or stupid, or reckless. Clean stories. Effort goes in, reward comes out. The universe keeps its books balanced, but the world simply does not run that clean. The exact same risky bet that makes one person look like a fearless visionary makes another person look like a reckless fool. And very often the only real difference between those two outcomes is a result that neither of them ever controlled. The line between bold and crazy can be a single millimeter thick, and you only ever get to see which side of that line a person was standing on after the fact, once luck and risk have already cast their silent votes, which means the way most of us try to learn about money is quietly dangerous. We study the specific winners. We find the one famous billionaire who broke every rule and won anyway, and we try to copy him move for move. But for every single one of him, there are 1,000 people who did the exact same things, took the exact same risks, and lost everything they had. You never hear their names. You never read their books. Because failure, unlike success, does not get a publishing deal. So what do you actually do? Living in a world this unfair, this random, this far outside your control. You do two things, and they are quietly among the most powerful moves you will ever make with money. First, when things go right for you, always leave room for luck. When an investment pays off, when a risk works out beautifully, resist with everything you have the urge to credit it all to your own genius. Because the person who becomes convinced that their success was pure skill is the exact same person who then bets bigger and bigger and bigger, totally certain they cannot lose, right up until the very same forces that lifted them up turn around and quietly take it all back. Humility here is not just a nice virtue to have, it is financial armor. Second, when things go wrong, for you or for anyone around you, always leave room for risk. The friend who made the bad call, the person who lost it all, they may not have been foolish at all. They may simply have been standing in the one spot where the lightning happened to strike. Give them grace. And just as importantly, give yourself that same grace, so that a single failure never gets to convince you that you are fundamentally broken. And stop studying individual heroes and villains. Stop trying to reverse engineer the one extreme outlier who happened to win the lottery of circumstance. Look instead for the broad patterns, the things that worked for most people, most of the time, across many lives. That, and not the dazzling exception, is where the real, repeatable, usable lessons actually live. Picture for a moment a single photograph. The two boys, Bill Gates and Kent Evans, sitting side by side in that small computer room, lit by the glow of a machine almost no one else on Earth could touch. Freeze that frame. Hold it perfectly still. Now imagine showing that photo to anyone alive and asking them one simple question. Which of these two boys becomes one of the richest men in the history of the world? And which one does not live to see adulthood? Nobody could tell you. Not their teachers, not their parents, not the two boys themselves. Same frame, same promise. Two completely opposite fates already waiting in the dark, and not one person in that room could see them coming. Bill Gates was a genius who got lucky. Kent Evans was a genius who got unlucky. The entire distance between their two lives is the whole subject of this lesson, and it is a distance that neither boy ever got to choose. You will never fully untangle how much of your own life is effort and how much of it is fortune. No one can. But the moment you truly accept that both of them are always in the room with you, you start making calmer, wiser, safer decisions with your money and your time. You stop worshiping the winners. You stop crucifying the losers. And you start playing the long game with the humility it has always quietly demanded. Because in the end, luck writes far more of your story than your ego will ever admit. Next time, we look at what happens when that humility vanishes completely. When enough is never enough, and brilliant, wealthy people throw away everything they have already won, chasing something they were never going to catch. Stay on the blueprint. See you in the next step.